with me, Lynne O'Donnell. My guest today is Mohsin Dawar. He's a Pakistani politician and rights activist from North Waziristan, bordering Afghanistan. He was a member of Pakistan's parliament for 5 years and campaigned to regain his seat in the elections in February. He lost, despite his own polls showing him ahead with more than half the vote, while protesting with supporters against what they believed was a fraudulent vote count that robbed Dawar of victory. They were fired on. Mohsin was badly injured and some of his supporters were killed. I talked to him about Pakistan's complex and complicated political landscape, his activism and passionately held beliefs in democracy, human rights, women's emancipation, and about what he calls Project Taliban, his name for what he sees as the re-emergence in Pakistan's tribal belt of a terrorist war. I visited Mohsin in his hometown of Miran Shah in North Waziristan, just a few kilometres from the Afghanistan border, a few days before the election in February. I came away with no doubt that the region is again at war with Taliban militants and that he has every reason to fear a return of Islamism to his homeland. Sometimes, though, it's difficult to know who the real enemy is. Have a listen. Mohsin, welcome and thank you for your time today. Please first accept my condolences on the violent death of the journalist Kamran Khan in recent days. I believe he was killed in Tapi village close to your home in Miran Shah, and a place where you were ambushed in January while campaigning for election. Can you tell me a little bit about that episode?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, Lynn, for inviting me to your podcast. Well, as you mentioned that in the start of January, the election campaign was, about to start because we were filing the nomination papers and all the requirements, which are required to for election. Meanwhile, we were invited to Tapi village for a few corner meetings by our party members. And on that day, the moment we entered this village, we were attacked by some militants, and they straight away fired on my vehicle, which was fortunately an armed vehicle, and that's why I luckily survived, because when I was repairing my car, the person who was working on it, he told me that the first shot was the headshot where you were sitting, and it was it seems to be from a trained shooter, and also the rest of the bullets, they were fired in such a way that it were hitting, either on the head or on the neck or somewhere. But later on, they just brushed and they fired on my entire vehicle. There was hardly any space left which was not shot, and they also tried to shot the oil tank of the vehicle when they realized that the vehicle is armored. So they thought that if we shoot on the oil tank, so it may get fire, and then yeah. So, but then with a rebuttal from our friends and the police who was accompanying me, they disappeared. I don't know why, whether they got some injuries or they got some damage, but they disappeared for a while, and we entered a home which was close to that that area. Then I called my friends, my party workers, the people of my tribe, and I called the police. And when all of them, reached that place, we started to move back again. But then, the moment I delivered a short speech and I entered, we started moving, we were attacked again. And this time they were properly stationed from in places which were unknown to our friends, because um, they were firing from different areas from the top of the surrounding hills, and it was at this time a bit difficult. So the police accompanying me, they had too many calls to the to their high ups for rescue and for heli support
Mm.
from the military, because there is a one division army with lots of capacity and lot of every kind of equipments with them. So, but that these calls, they the calls went in vain, and nobody came for rescue. But our friends and the police who was accompanying me, they fought, and they fought until the militants disappeared from the screen once again. So from the start till the end, the entire process of fighting in the first stage and then the break and the next one, it went for almost 2 hours,
Mm.
and
Mm.
then well, luckily all of our friends remained safe, except two of our friends who got bullet injuries, but they were um shot in the safe zone.
Well, I saw photographs of your car. I think 80 bullets were taken out of the car. And as you say, there was a bullet hole right in front of where you would have been sitting, and one right at the side.
Yes.
This was a serious, sustained attack, clearly meant to kill you. I noticed that there was hardly any coverage, maybe, a very small report in the Pakistan media. Had it been um, someone of your stature in any other country, it would have been front page news, screaming from the TVs for weeks and weeks, but it just disappeared. And then you came under attack again while protesting for access to the counting room after the February 8 elections. And on that occasion, you were injured, and some of your supporters and friends were killed. What were the circumstances on that occasion?
Well, I think the first attempt was also planned to contain me from the election campaign.
Mm.
And it was through the proxies, and because they had decided that they will drop me, and they will stop me from the parliament at any cost, and they will go up to any extent. And this message was conveyed by some well-wishers who were a part of these meetings where these things were discussed.
Mm.
And the message
Mm.
conveys was that the decision is on the top level of the military, not the local, command. So the plan was to stop me from the parliament at any cost, and I think for the same purpose, um, I was attacked by the militants. I think the plan was to get away with me and just to kill me, and so by that process, because at that time the election process was yet to be started, so there would have been no harm to the election if it would have happened, because according to the Election Act, if some candidate dies during the election campaign, the election is postponed. So that was planned before the election to just remove me from the screen. But luckily I survived, and uh, then some messages were spread again by the intelligence agencies that a suicide attacker is roaming around your hujra, and he can enter anytime, and he will hug you and then blast himself. So things were a bit because I after this attack I stopped my election campaign. My party workers, but my friends they still went on with the election campaign,
Yeah.
and it kept going on, and. Well, that they have put aside all the fears and all the threats, and similarly people started coming to my hujra, and this was again quite a difficult task to contain the risk, because when too many people coming in to meet you, there is hardly possible that they can come in in any shape.
Yeah.
So, but we kept going on with that, and we faced all the threats, and went all the way to the election day. But on the election day, we were informed that in the same village, Tapi, uh, uh, where Kamran Dawar was shot last day, when we sent our female polling agents to that village, the moment they reached the polling station, they faced a bomb blast, and our female polling stations were brought back by our friends, our party members, to our village, in unconscious condition, and they almost collapsed because the intensity of the blast was too much that
Mm.
it has affected them a lot. So when they came back, it started from that, and so it was just one incident. Same kind of incident happened in different areas of the constituency, but still the lead was too much that they couldn't uh, s- they didn't understand what to do next. And just to add on to this, I think I was the only political worker um, who stated in live video 2 days before the election that the news which I am hearing and the information which I am getting is that they're going to stop me at any cost. Um, and the last option they will use is the Form 45. Because after the attack and after spreading the news of suicide attackers, still, the campaign went on, and then by uh, deploying the political workers who were government officials also of other political parties, uh, on the polling agent as a presiding officer on polling stations of my home village. So they used all the tactics, but I still believe that even with all these things, we will win. But I still thought that they're gonna do, even if they, if they're gonna succeed in all these things, they will still do something. And the last option was again the Form 45, and I was the only one who stated in a live video that the last option they're gonna use will be tempering the Form 45, and that's
Yeah.
what
Just
happened.
to the Form 45 is the validation of the final count.
Yes, it's the validation of the final count, and
And this was,
it's a final result of the polling station.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So
but
the counting
for
group,
2 days,
yeah.
I was in the returning officer's office where all the results were coming, and we were on the lead. But on the second day, late night, about 2 a.m. or something like that, we decided that to take a break and seal the Jarga Hall where the counting was going on. The same practice we did on the first night also. So we went to a friend's residence in the near colony, and the next day when we came out, the our office was sealed, the district commissioner compound was sealed, and we were not allowed to enter the counting room and to observe the counting process. And then we decided to protest. And the moment I went out, because our party members were waiting at the gate of Miran Shah Kent for 2 days. And when I came out and I said that we're gonna close all the we're gonna protest against this because this thing is going on. They are not allowing me to enter and to witness the counting process. But the moment I was talking to my friends, our party members, um, the military at the gate of Miran Shah Kent, they started firing, and they started firing, bluntly. And I was the first one to got shot, and then when I collapsed, one of our friend Sher Ayub Bazir, who was standing behind me. So the moment I collapsed, I was surrounded by some of our friends,
Mm.
but he didn't realize he was in a shock that what happened, and
Yeah.
he was still thinking that what happened. That the next bullet came and he was shot on his head and he died on the spot. Similarly, two other friends, Wasif and Wahab, they also uh, were martyred on the spot. And one of our other member, Muhammad Yusuf, who was initially critically injured, he had his successful surgery, but later on, because of some complications, he also he died. So four of our friends they were killed, and 15, including myself, were injured.
Goodness. It's pretty clear that North Waziristan hasn't known peace for quite some time in recent decades, really. And much of the reason has been connected to the long war in neighbouring Afghanistan and the support given to the Taliban by Pakistan's military and intelligence establishment. You're sitting there on the front line in the tribal belt. What are your observations of what's been going on throughout the past 20 or even 40 years?
Well, I think the generation, because initially when after 9/11, I was a student in the university, so which is comparatively a mature age, but the generation followed by me have only witnessed war during last 24 years. And so starting from the influx of Taliban after after 9/11, when the US entered Afghanistan, and then the NATO forces, then the influx of Taliban, they were given a kind of safe shelter in Waziristan, and
Yeah,
all these things were planned. So not just Taliban, the groups with any name, Al Qaeda, the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, and ETIM, East Turkestan Islamic Movement, and later on a local group to give them a cover. A local group of Taliban with the name of TTP was formed, and I believe that the only reason of the formation of TTP, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, was to give a cover to all the militants coming from Afghanistan, to give a perception to the rest of the world that these are not the people who have come from Afghanistan. These are the local Taliban, and they have their own agenda. They have their own objectives. Although all these things were the same, and we have been telling it from the very first day that there is no difference between these Taliban and those Taliban who have fought in Afghanistan or who are fighting in Afghanistan right now. So during all these times, we have seen death and destruction. We have seen humiliation. We have seen every kind of disaster. We have seen every kind of whatever one can imagine. We have seen everything. Then came a stage that we were told, and the people were giving a 24 hours notice to go out from Waziristan, and that Pakistan military is planning military operation in Waziristan. People, with such a short notice, they went out having and carrying nothing with them and left all what they have, in their homes. So they remained in
Yeah,
camps
about
for a very long
2014.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. They
yeah,
they remained in camps. They were confined in camps for a
yeah.
very long time, leaving behind big, and very um, with spacious homes behind in their own area and confining themselves within a tents in the
Mm,
hot summer of Badu and uh, the adjacent districts. But still, they had a hope that we will go back and we will live a respectful and a peaceful uh, life after the military operations. So the military operations went on, but in the military operations, because the moment the military got a message that uh, a decision has been made for a military operation, they left the area and they went to the places where they are still are, and they remained there during all this time. And nobody was harmed amongst them, because when I came to the parliament, the first question I asked was that tell us the names of the militants who have either been killed or arrested during Operation Zarb-e Azda. I didn't got the answer because the defense ministry was throwing the question to interior. Interior was sending back to the defense, and at the end of the day, the question disappeared. I didn't got the answer. So there was no harm to the militants. They remained safe during the entire operation. But what happened was that Miransha Bazar was destroyed, Mirali Bazar was destroyed, and the rest of small, bazaars in different areas of Waziristan, they were destroyed. And houses were destroyed.
mm, mm.
And
Yeah,
there was hardly anyone, home left uh, safe and remained untouched.
mm,
So that phase, when they returned, they saw everything destroyed. And apart from that, uh, they saw, some worse kind of torture and humiliation again. Because during that time, when you have to move from one village to another village, you had to seek permission of the military, and you have to enter yourself, and they're registered, and they will give you a receipt, and only then you can move from one village to another village. So that was the situation. And if any kind of mishap happened, then the people were, they were made responsible for whatever happened, because in my own village, um, a family who came back, and they were removing the remains of their destroyed home. And during that process, some minor and ID, something like that, it blasted, and a young man was killed in that.
mm,
So, followed by that incident, the military came and they picked up his father and his uncles, his family members, and they were then taken to a torture cell, and they were tortured. From where did this mind came? So the funeral was waiting. His son's funeral was waiting, and the family was taken. They were in their custody, and they were forced to tell that who brought this mine. They were said that
mm.
our son was killed, or a young man is killed in this. So why are you blaming us?
Yeah,
They, we should
mm,
blame you. That why don't you clean all these things before bringing us back? So this
yeah.
kind of incident it took place, and then
I
then
think a lot of people
after.
don't understand. A lot of people don't understand the impact of the Pakistani establishment support for the Taliban in their war against the US NATO republic government has also really dreadfully impacted people on your side of the border and people that you know and people who support you. I think that that's missing. And when I visited you in February, I was really quite shocked to see that um, the level of development is so low. You know, the roads, electricity, water, schools, hospitals. There is really nothing there for people to come back to, even if their homes were still standing. So there is a very great level of neglect, even while now, with the Taliban returned to power over the border, um, the blowback is again impacting your part of the world very, very severely.
You know, you are talking about the human development and all the things, all the the basic
Yes.
needs associated with that.
Yeah,
Well, I think if someone asks me, or I believe anyone from my area, I think all these things are secondary for them. They are still fighting for their basic right to live.
yeah,
They are
yeah,
fighting
yeah,
with their initial right to just live. So they have been deprived of that. Uh, all the rest of the things, I agree. They're also the basic needs, and you cannot survive with all these basic things. But before that, something comes, which is a right to live. So this is something which we have been deprived from. As I said, that when the people came back initially, they were treated like this, and then after the political uprising in the region and
mm,
uh, the very large scale mass mobilization, it went, but the things got contained for. Although still the target killings were going on, but there was an opinion that there is some sort of political awareness right now amongst the general public because they have been through a lot. But things got worse after the collapse of Kabul, because then there remained no hope, and the influx of Taliban after that was on such a large scale that even with a lot of political activity, and we have been calling it from the very first day. Since I went to the parliament, from the very first day in my speech to my last speech during the entire 5 years, I have, categorically raised the resurgence of Taliban time and again.
yeah,
But the moment I used to start talking about the militancy, uh, the speaker would switch off my mic. And at that time, again, the speaker, secretariat, and the entire assembly was in the control of a military. And they deployed um, a colonel in the National Assembly to control all these proceedings. So
yeah,
once I said in the parliament that why are you guys so reluctant to hear about when I talk about militancy and when I condemn militancy and when I talk that Taliban are coming back? So why are you stopping me from saying that? Why are you stopping me from reporting it in the parliament of Pakistan? I said it gives a perception, and it endorses a perception that this is uh, a military project, and it's a state-sponsored project, and that's why you do not want to hear something bad about it, and you want it to get spread. You know, one more thing which I would like to mention is that all these things, it happened with the consent of the West, with the consent of the US and all their allies. I think it was never possible that they didn't know about what Pakistan was doing, because they had the US had their base camps in Balochistan, and Pakistan provided safe shelters to Taliban in Pakistan. Both were, operating from Balochistan. So
Yeah.
now they were not fighting with each other within the territory of Pakistan. Both were going to Afghanistan to fight against each other. So how
Yeah.
come was that possible that the US, with such a being a superpower and being such a big, military power, such a big access to, they have technology and they have everything. So I
Yeah.
think, and being with such a massive presence here within Pakistan also. So I don't think so that it was possible without the consent of the larger strategic plan was, you know, to use the Taliban in the future, and that's what they have did. They have brought them back through Doha deal. Pakistan was also facilitated in the entire process, and when
Mm.
they were brought back to Kabul, and when they took over Kabul, the influx of the Taliban, it started, and then under the umbrella of talks, they spread, they got spread in the entire Pakhtunkhwa, and now in most of the district they had de facto control.
Well, this is what you refer to as Project Taliban, right?
Well,
So
yes,
what?
this project Taliban, yeah, this project
Yeah.
Taliban is something which started uh, against because Project Mujahideen was also sponsored by the US. Then to
Yeah.
counter the Project Mujahideen, because they were
Mm.
in bits and pieces, and they were, it was a bit hard to control all of them. They were countered by the Taliban. And one more thing which I would like to mention is what happened with the Mujahideen after they took over Kabul through Taliban. I think the same kind of thing is happening, going to happen to Taliban through ISKP. I think history is repeating itself, and um, because Taliban Mujahideen fought with the name of religion,
Yeah.
Taliban fought against them with the name of religion. Now ISKP is fighting against Taliban with the name of religion. So
Mm.
the religion is the tool, but the objective is again the one and only, to keep the entire region in a chaos, and to keep the entire region in turmoil, and to keep the cycle of the war going on. And the purpose is to contain the Belt and Road Initiative and the economic expansion of other emerging powers like China, and also to keep a check and control on the Russia and the West, or the US wants to keep their hegemony, no, on the entire world, and that's what the strategic purpose of all this Project Taliban is.
So where does Project Taliban go now? I mean, the blowback on the Pakistan establishment has been quite severe. You're witnessing that. But the Pakistan establishment seems to have supported the Taliban in its war against the Republic, the US, NATO, in order to further its policy of strategic depth. We were always hearing about strategic depth. This is the way the Pakistan establishment pushes India's ambitions for regional dominance back. And it hasn't quite worked like that, has it?
Well, I think once again, I would say that it was just a slogan to give some sort of justification to the strategic depth. Uh, Although I now believe that the recent Taliban government is more hands in glove with India, but the problem is that it was just a slogan to justify the strategic depth. And I also believe that the strategic depth was again, the strategic purpose and the strategic objective was of the West, of the US, and the strategic depth terminology was for just for the local uh, for the local justification. And I don't think so that the Pakistan military had any say in formulating any kind of policy regarding Afghanistan, regarding the rest of the world. So they have, from the very first day, worked as a proxy from the Cold War, and then the war which continued from last 40, 45 years. The only thing which they have done is to act as a proxy and as a local contractor of the war. So they didn't have any um, they didn't have any um, their own. They didn't have their own objectives. They were just following the objectives of the West. Yes, for the local justification, they also didn't want Afghanistan prosper. They also will never want the Pakistan, the Punjabi generals. They will never want Afghanistan to prosper, and they will do their level best to to harm anything which can lead in the to development of Afghanistan, which can lead towards and establish towards a peaceful and a strong Afghanistan, because they have their own historical things and their mind against Afghanistan. So both of these things, the strategic interest of the West and their internal and the historic hatred against Afghanistan, it has converged and it has resulted in the Project Taliban. And that's why they have been supporting and they have been giving safe shelters to Taliban during last 20, more than 20 years. Right now, when we talk about the blowback, I think it's also a part of the script. And because I still believe that Taliban um, are in control, and that the space given to them is deliberate. And because it's a policy of the West, so then it's a policy of Pakistan, because they want Taliban to get spread in the entire region of the Afghanistan and Pakhtunkhwa and up to the Wakhan corridor. So Pakistan also wants the same. So there is. So that's why they were brought back under the umbrella of talks, because we had a long debate with the military journalists during the national security meetings, and they couldn't justify why they are talking why they're bringing them back. When when I questioned them about the point of agreement with them, they didn't have any answer, because, as I said, that you were saying that they will have to surrender, and they are saying that the military has to withdraw and they have to leave our territory for us. It means we will be the one who will be in control. So I said, what's the meeting, the point of agreement between these two different extremes? They didn't have any answer.
But
So
the
it means
outcome was predictable. Where we are now, we could have
right
predicted
now,
and did predict 3 years ago.
pardon?
Where the point that we have reached now was predicted. You predicted it. You warned
Yes.
about it. Yeah.
Well,
So we knew.
I have written about it. My
Yeah.
articles are a part of the record. I have written about, and I've written about it when the Doha deal was signed, when the
Yep.
so-called peace process started, and I have written about it. That and you are not including the Afghan government in this, and I have written about all the consequences. I have stated on the floor of the parliament that what gonna be the consequences of what you are doing. But they are now this project has been now executed. Let me say it has now been executed very shamelessly. They don't care about people talking against them, people coming out and protesting, people coming out with rallies and press conferences and with everything. They don't care.
So the next step, ISKP.
Yes, because the moment the Taliban regime will get a bit softer, the moment they will start building relation with the neighboring countries, the moment they will start, implementing the BRI, the moment they will start, taking some progressive steps, the moment ISKP will come out with even more intensity, with more capacity, with more money, with more equipments, and the process will start, that when they gonna take over Kabul after that. So this is a cycle, um,
Yes.
uh, which is keep going on from last 45 years.
What's the worst case scenario? It seems to me that the Pakistani state is facing an existential threat from Project Taliban. Project ISKP will not make things any better. What's the worst case scenario?
Well, the worst case scenario is, I know that the threat is there, but it is a designed threat. Let me say it very
Okay.
categorically, that
Yeah.
whatever happens, it will be happening with the consent of the state of Pakistan. Any regional development happening, it will be happening with the consent of the state of Pakistan. If they already had a de facto control on many of the districts, like as I said, North Waziristan, Banu, Lucky Marwat, Tang, Khan, and South Waziristan, and some other
Yeah.
areas also. They had a de facto control. So, but if there is, if if there is a formal takeover in some of the areas, it will happen with the consent of the state of Pakistan and
Mm.
with the Western designs, and it is highly expected, because the intensity with which the militants are moving and with the indifference they are facing in the space they are getting from the Pakistani military. So it is very much obvious that um, sooner or later, um,
Mm.
unless
Mm.
the Pakistani journalists made their mind, changed their mind, and um they they decide to to not becoming a part of this new great game, then there is a possibility that it can be contend. But right now, um, all everything seems to be in the line, and they are working on the script.
Yes, I think that script was pretty clear, wasn't it, during the evacuation from Kabul? We saw that horrific explosion outside the airport that claimed an awful lot of lives, including US soldiers. But that was blamed immediately on ISKP. Anyone who had been watching the war in Afghanistan for the decade previous would have thought that that was a Haqqani network attack. It looked like, it smelled like a Haqqani network attack. But almost immediately, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, said the Taliban can be a counter-terrorism partner of the United States against ISKP. And since then, ISKP has been the big new enemy.
Well, I think they think that they can fool people for
Yeah,
time and again, but I believe they cannot.
yeah,
The previous days they issued a joint statement with the Pakistani officials that we gonna fight jointly against TTP and ISKP. So it against they believe that the rest of the world, they do not understand what we are doing, so they create terror, and then they come out to act against that terror. So initially, they announced a bounty of 10 billion, uh, had money on the leadership of Taliban and 5 million and 8 million, and then they became good guys, and then ISKP was the one to be targeted. So
mm,
this is the cycle which they have been repeating since the Mujahideen. Initially, these Mujahideen were called to the US, and then the same Mujahideen were then countered by Taliban, and then Taliban for a very long time, as I said, they announced hard money on their leadership, but then suddenly we saw articles of Sirajuddin Haqqani getting published in New York Times. Then they became good guys, and then now ISKP is the one which they are trying to create a perception that it is um, an enemy of Taliban and US. So
yeah.
Taliban was your enemy few years ago. What happened during that time? How come that enemy converted into your ally? At least it needs explanation, but they do not give it. They do not want to because they believe that we can fool the people, but they cannot. So things are very much open right now, and everyone believes that the entire war on terror was planned for some specific strategic objectives, and the recent process of Doha deal and then handing over Afghanistan to Taliban, followed by
Mm,
all these incidents. It was a part of that strategic game, and everything
mm,
is going on with the script. But if they believe that uh, mm, the rest of the world would also believe that ISKP is something which is against the US, I don't think so that they can fool people anymore.
mm. Yes, I think you're right. It is, yes, an establishment project. But what's the solution? We know about it. We can recognise it. We can also recognise who the stakeholders are. New York Times publishes opinion pieces by Siraj Haqqani, and also after the recent Moscow attack, New York Times on the front page immediately blamed ISKP, claimed that ISKP had claimed responsibility, although they did not,
Mhm.
with no background, no sourcing of the story. It was like weapons of mass destruction all over again. This is the project. So if we know that, what's the solution to that?
Well, solutions, there are different solutions for different level. Like the US, they will never back up from their strategic objectives because they believe that we should keep our hegemony on the rest of the world. So they will keep going on and with whatever they have done and whatever they are doing right now. If we talk about Pakistan, there is a chance for the Pakistani establishment to get out of this mess of fighting and again, and become a proxy of the U.S., which it is from its inception. There is no
Yeah,
doubt about it.
yeah,
But it is for the Pakistani state to decide that whether they want to be a proxy and um, be a proxy until they destroy their own country. Um, so it's now up to them. And for the people of Pakhtunkhwa in Afghanistan, the only option which we have, and the only strategy which we have to get rid of all these things is to say no to any kind of violence in any shape from anyone. If the political workers, if the political parties, if they can't succeed, in spreading this message that violence in any shape, it is disastrous and it is planned against our region, and the only thing which we can like get rid of it is to not get used for these proxy projects, which is not an easy task because in such a vulnerable society like us, it is very much easy to exploit people with money and power and too many things.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy task for the political workers also because since I formed since the National Democratic Movement was formed 3 years ago. Since that day, when I started, the campaign from my own constituency because it is the one which I believe that it's gonna be affected the most. So I started going from one village to other, and I moved around the entire Waziristan. And my, message was very simple: that do not get co-opted by any kind of movement or organization who is pushing you towards violence.
Mm. Mm.
Temporarily you might get some incentives, but in the long run it might be very harmful for yourself, for your family, for your entire village, for your entire district. So we have worked a lot, we have tried a lot, we have tried to spread this message a lot. But when such big powers are planning and acting on something, it becomes a bit difficult to conduct. And
Mm.
unless we do that, the things will get worse day by day.
Yeah. Well, hundreds of thousands of people in your part of the world have come out and protested. So are you optimistic? People have made it very clear that they don't want violence. They don't want army state violence. They don't want Taliban militant violence. They just want to live peacefully. Are you optimistic that they will be allowed to live in peace?
Well, as I said that I have, I think, explained the plans of the Pakistani military establishment and the rest of the world. It's now only up to the people that how can they counter and how much they can contain this venom.
Yeah.
Because as and the things are very much clear, and as one of the Pashto poets said that das is oknishta چې کابل په خبر جوړوي das is oknishta چې په دې ورانه کې لاس نه لري das is oknishta چې کابل په خبر جوړوي. Like there is no one who is not involved in this mess, and there is no one who is building Kabul and Peshawar. So it's the people of Pakhtunkhwa and the people of Waziristan who have to decide and who have to stand up that no, we will never allow these projects anymore um, on our motherland.
Okay, well,
And
thank you very much.
being a political worker, I have to keep the hope alive. I have to be optimistic because
Yes.
once you lose the hope, I think you lose everything.
Yes, indeed. Hope is life. Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I'm very grateful to you for your time today. Thank you, Mohsin.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much for taking me.
That was Mohsin Dawar, a Pakistani politician and rights activist. He was speaking from his home in the tribal belt of North Waziristan on the border of Afghanistan. He talked about his personal experiences in recent months. He's come under fire twice and was seriously injured himself and lost close friends and supporters. He talked about Project Taliban, effectively, he says, a Western strategic policy of regional destabilization that was launched immediately after Al-Qaeda attacked the United States on 9/11 in 2001. It's led to little but violence, death and misery in his part of the world. Nevertheless, he says he remains hopeful because hope is life. Next time, I'll be joined by Laura Dietz, an American lady living in London who spent the best part of the past 3 years helping vulnerable people get out of Afghanistan. I hope you'll join us. Until then, I'm Lynne O'Donnell. Bye-bye.